So what really happens in the autopsy room and why? Well, you're not going to believe this, but autopsies are a lot older than you imagined. How old? Well, the autopsy of Julius Caesar is regarded by experts as the first known autopsy performed specifically to establish the facts about a homicide. And if you know anything about the guy, aside from his scandalous affair with Cleopatra, his assassination assured that everyone knows at least one Latin phrase.
Et tu, Brute!
Given the fact that Caesar lived and died around 2,000 years ago, and how Shakespeare's frequently performed play Julius Caesar takes major theatrical license with the facts, it's remarkable that we know so much about his death. That's probably thanks to Antistius, a physician believed to have been Caesar's personal doctor. He examined Caesar's body, which reportedly remained untouched for 3 hours, right on the spot where he was killed. The doctor took good notes, especially for the year 44 BC, which in a stroke of luck for the historical records survived. According to those notes, Caesar sustained 23 stab wounds, only one of which was fatal, a wound between his first and second ribs that either penetrated his heart or ruptured a major artery. This likely led to Caesar bleeding out and causing his death. It should be noted that this first autopsy didn't reveal the perpetrators, but it didn't need to. They publicly announced themselves and the fact that they had saved the Republic from tyranny, as proud assassins tend to do. While an autopsy can provide much-needed answers or even reveal unexpected details about a person's life, it's not necessary in the case of every death. Its purpose is to establish the cause or causes of deaths that happen under mysterious circumstances. If foul play is suspected, autopsy. If there may be a public health threat, autopsy.
Well, you want to look at it?
Some deaths in the US legally require an autopsy, but the laws are different from state to state. In Iowa, for instance, a medical examiner must perform an autopsy in the case of a homicide. Makes sense. The state also requires autopsies for all children below 2 years of age, all work and farm-related deaths, unless they're from natural causes, all drowning deaths, and all deaths by poison.
But if this body went into the water in mid-April, the fish or crabs would have nibbled away at the soft tissue.
Meanwhile, Rhode Island laws authorize the state's medical examiners to perform autopsies for sudden, unexpected, or violent deaths. In most states, next of kin aren't charged for autopsies, but there is a charge for the final report. And while some states restrict access to the results to law enforcement and family, in others, those reports are part of the public record. In cases where the cause of death is an unexpected illness, a doctor may recommend that the person's loved ones request an autopsy. This is partly for closure, but determining the cause of death might also protect the person's family and close friends from dying of the same condition. Safety first. As one would expect, an autopsy report contains the manner and cause of death. In the case of an unidentified body, an autopsy can sometimes help determine the victim's identity based on observable characteristics like fingerprints and tattoos and genetic tests. An autopsy can also help determine the approximate time of death or the length of time a person has been dead.
Was he alive after impact?
Briefly.
And of course, medical examiners can find out if the victim was exposed to any potentially contagious illness or life-threatening pathogens, like the anthrax bacterium. Sometimes an autopsy reveals that the deceased was unaware that they were suffering from a disease while they were still alive. This was the case with Robin Williams, who took his own life in 2014. Toward the end of his life, he'd been experiencing hallucinations, forgetfulness, and mobility issues that led to a worsening depression. The autopsy revealed that Williams had been suffering from advanced stages of a neurological disorder called Lewy body dementia.
We were living a nightmare.
What an autopsy report won't tell you, at least not directly, are answers to more existential questions. According to a 1314 report from the Bishop of Florence, an autopsy was conducted on a two-headed child to determine, among other things, if there were actually two souls inhabiting the child's body. What they were looking for to prove that, who knows?
I'm a scientist, not a witch doctor.
There are two types of autopsies, a forensic or coroner's inquiry, or a clinical or hospital-based procedure. A coroner's autopsy takes place when the deceased died by suicide or there is a possibility that a crime was committed. Again, the rules around the procedure may vary from one state to another, but for the purposes of legal investigation, authorities may order a medical examiner to perform an autopsy even without consent from the loved ones of the deceased. A hospital-based autopsy, on the other hand, may be requested by family members if they want to determine the patient's cause of death, and can't take place without the family's consent. Sometimes the family members of the deceased aren't convinced by the results of the initial legally mandated autopsy and want a second opinion. In cases like that, they can reach out to another forensic pathologist to conduct a private autopsy, for a fee, of course. When Michael Jackson passed away in 2009, the LA County coroner determined, though not with finality, that the pop star died of acute propofol intoxication, with benzodiazepine as a contributory factor. Jackson's family requested a second private autopsy, perhaps to get results faster, as the first autopsy was expected to take up to 6 weeks to finalize. So, what really happens during an autopsy? We're not going to get too gross here, so before you start pondering skipping ahead, don't worry, at least not yet. It starts with an external examination. This allows the medical examiner to document the distinct characteristics of the deceased, including their height and weight, to identify potential focus areas, and to make initial observations to guide the rest of the procedure.
We're gonna look, see if there's any signs of a struggle. See if any signs that he's fighting anybody off, basically.
There may be tattoos, birthmarks, or scars unique to the victim, which are invaluable if an identification is needed. Not to mention that there may be wounds or injuries key to determining the circumstances of the death. The victim's clothes, as well as their scent, can also provide important clues.
Would you feel the face and jaw, please? Am I mistaken, or has rigor begun?
The medical examiner conducts a series of routine tests and inspections, including testing for rigor mortis by moving the lower jaw or the joints at the extremities and checking under the fingernails for potentially significant residue. The presence of blood pooling in specific body parts also matters because it can indicate the position of the person's body at the time of their death. This is useful information if, for example, authorities suspect the body was moved from its original position after death. Getting up close and personal with a dead body may understandably be too much for some to handle, and the internal examination isn't for the faint of heart. So, yes, now we're getting into it. Buckle up. The medical examiner first inserts a scalpel into the body's chest and makes a massive incision. In many cases, the cut is Y-shaped, 2 diagonal lines starting from the front of the shoulders and meeting at the lower chest, with a tail down to the level of the hips, skirting around the navel. After opening up the resulting flaps, the examiner then uses a saw, or in some cases pruning shears, to cut out portions of the rib cage and other bones that block access to the internal organs. The examiner typically removes all the organs from the open torso in one fell swoop, weighs them, and places them on the autopsy table for individual dissection. Tissue samples may be taken and placed on microscope slides for further examination. Unlike the other organs, the stomach and intestines aren't weighed after being taken out. Instead, the examiner cuts them open and notes what's inside them, including any undigested food, which can be a vital clue in a criminal investigation. Next is the brain. After the scalp is gently peeled back, the cranial covering is sawed off, creating an opening large enough for the brain to be carefully removed. The brain may then be prepped and preserved. Lastly, the examiner notes any items found in the body that shouldn't normally be there, like bullets, glass shards, or other suspicious materials. Once a forensic pathologist finishes jotting down all the relevant information pertaining to each body part, all the removed organs, except the ones needed for further tests or examination, if any, are sealed inside a viscera bag, a plastic bag that keeps them safe and prevents fluid leakage, and placed inside the abdomen of the deceased. Then the examiner sews the body closed, after which the remains are released to a family member or funeral director for it to be laid to rest. Additionally, the examiner informs the family about any parts of the deceased that will remain with the lab because of their relevance to the investigation. At this point, the medical examiner may either make the results of the autopsy public, release the cause of death to the family, or make the full report available for a fee. The first 2 outcomes typically happen if the autopsy was mandated by the state. On the other hand, if the autopsy was clinical in nature, the family may get a copy of the findings from the hospital, though not for free. In some cases, a hands-on physical autopsy just isn't possible. Perhaps the body is too old and delicate to examine without damaging it, or too radioactive to be safely dissected. And sometimes the situation demands a particularly high level of accuracy, beyond the capacity of human eyes and hands. Enter the virtual autopsy, or virtopsy, a non-invasive alternative to traditional autopsy that utilizes advanced medical imaging technologies such as CT or MRI scans and ultrasound to gather data from a body without handling it.
In deceased persons, we don't have to worry about radiation. We can use radiation at high levels so that we can actually get really, really good quality examination.
The examiners first use advanced 3D imaging equipment to create specific markers on the body to be virtopsied. Then a CT scanner is used to snap thousands of images of the remains from end to end, forming a complete 3D image of the deceased, including the skeleton and organs. This use of MRI also makes it possible for examiners to find internal injuries or gauge the condition of soft tissues inside the body. One of the earliest documented uses of virtopsy took place in Zurich, Switzerland at the turn of the 20th century. The examiners used x-rays to compare observable damage on a victim's skull with a wrench suspected to have caused it. So, how long do you have to perform an autopsy? As in, how long can a body be deceased and still get a useful autopsy? The short answer is that, thanks to modern-day technological advancements, autopsies can be conducted on decomposing bodies that have been buried and exhumed, or even on cadavers that are thousands of years old. Ideally, though, a newly deceased body should be subjected to an autopsy within 1 or 2 full days, as any longer could compromise the state of the organs and affect the results. One of the most high-profile examples of a prehistoric autopsy is a curious case of Autopsy, a 5,300-year-old mummy discovered by hikers in the Alps between Austria and Italy. Through a combination of traditional autopsy techniques and advanced imaging technology, researchers were able to paint a surprisingly comprehensive picture of the Chalcolithic man's life. Estimates place the Iceman, who was approximately 45 years old at the time of his death, at about 5 foot 3 inches tall, clocking in at 110 pounds. He even figured out what his last meal was. There were undigested bits of slowberries, goat or deer meat, unleavened bread, and, oddly enough, mosses in his digestive system. Upon further examination, the researchers learned that Autopsy was murdered, though initially they couldn't say for certain whether he bled to death thanks to an arrow to his shoulder or had his brains bashed in from behind. Eventually, blood tests revealed that it was most likely the arrow that did him in.